Nick Valentine is one of the best made characters in Fallout 4. He has one of the best written backstories. He has something important to say in nearly every major quest. He's a major plot element in the main story and also in the Far Harbor DLC. This guy has a lot going on. Because of that, I've already made more than one video on Nick Valentine, some of his more in-depth quests, and his relationships with other characters. But until now, I haven't focused on Valentine himself, on the person who is Nick Valentine. That's what I want to do with today's video. Now, there are two major parts of Nick Valentine's personal story that we need to understand first before we can understand the synth. The first part is where he came from. Nick Valentine was created by the Institute, but he was a prototype synth. He's more advanced than the Gen 1s and 2s, but not quite as advanced as a Gen 3. He's made of metal and plastic, not of DNA and flesh, like the Gen 3 synths are. He and his brother Dima, whom we meet in Acadia, are the only two known prototype synths. But Dima and Nick are very different. We learn from Dima that Dima was allowed to develop his own personality based on experience, but that Nick Valentine had a personality imprinted onto him.
This all started over a century ago, when we were first created. We were prototypes, Nick. The first synths capable of independent thinking and judgment.
Keep talking.
One of the Institute's experiments had to do with how our brains could process personality. If we could handle individualized feelings and behaviors, I was allowed to develop mine based on experience. But with you, they wanted to try transferring an entire personality into you.
Dima has made modifications to himself to expand his memory to allow him to remember more things, but Nick Valentine is stuck with the base components that the Institute gave him. He has a limited memory, which is why he forgets many of the earlier parts of his life. This is how he forgot that he and Dima were brothers. For the longest time, he thought he was simply discarded by the Institute, like some old trash.
What do you remember about the Institute?
It's all pretty hazy from back then, but now and then I get glimpses. Life inside the Institute, they keep you isolated. A single test chamber was my whole world for years, and someone was always watching. Then one day you wake up on the other side, and that's it. They've cut you loose. Welcome to the brave new world, with such people in it. Hey, maybe that's why the Institute tossed me in the garbage instead of turning me into one of their people snatchers. I remember waking up one day in a garbage heap, a body in tatters and a head full of memories belonging to a man who'd been dead for 200 years. Suffice to say, it was a confusing couple of weeks.
This feeling of being discarded helped build up a lot of resentment in his heart against the Institute, which may have led to many of his anti-Institute beliefs. We learn from Dima, however, that that wasn't true. He wasn't actually thrown out. Dima helped him escape.
It took several attempts before the personality imprint worked. I saw you wake up not knowing who or what you were so many times. I couldn't let them do it to you anymore. We were the only two prototypes they made. I literally saw myself in you. You were my brother, Nick. I helped you escape the Institute. We left together.
This changed Nick's perception of himself and how he felt about the Institute, but not in any meaningful way. He still dislikes the Institute. But the personality that was placed within Nick Valentine's mind was the mind of a pre-war cop named Nick Valentine.
My memories, my personality, they're all lifted from some cop who volunteered for an experiment back before the war. They scanned his brain and copied it onto the hardware that runs between my ears. Don't know why they chose to make a robot based on some pre-war cop instead of a math genius or a bioengineer.
The major problem with this is that Nick doesn't know where the original Nick Valentine ends and he begins.
Everything that makes me who I am, my judgment, my speech, hell, even my name, they're his. And I can't do a damn thing about it, because without them, I'm nothing. A shell. All I want is a life where I have something I can call my own.
Memories from the old Nick appear in flashes, like deja vu or dreams.
For as long as I can remember, I've been getting these, flashes. Memories of places I've never been. Things I've never seen. Memories of Nicks. They're not bad, they're just this inescapable reminder that I'm not the person I think I am. That I'm not a person at all. I'm just a machine, pretending to be human.
He harbors no resentment towards the original Nick. After all, it's not Nick's fault. But these flashes are constant reminders that he's not really his own man, that he was manufactured. His memories are not his. The very person that is Nick Valentine isn't real, and that is what bothers him.
Don't get me wrong. I know I'm in Nick's debt. These memories, they've kept me alive. Nick was a hell of a cop. A guy with good instincts and a good heart. But it's thanks to Nick that I pass for human. Why I get to live cushy in Diamond City, and every other synth is shot on sight. I know I got it good, but my entire life I owe to Nick.
This feeling of not being real makes him insecure. That's partly the reason why he enlisted your help in hunting down Eddie Winter. Eddie Winter was a mob boss before the war, whom the original Nick Valentine, the detective, was trying to put behind bars. But the original Nick Valentine ultimately failed, leading to the death of his fiancée at the hands of Eddie Winter. I covered that full story in great detail in my video about Eddie Winter that you can watch here. But the result of this is even after we kill Eddie Winter, even after Nick Valentine gets his revenge or justice, this doesn't make him whole.
Winter was it. The only reminder left of the original Nick Valentine. The last proof, outside of some long-lost Institute archive, I was ever just a mechanical copy of some cop from a bygone era. I'm not sure how to feel.
What were you expecting?
I just thought this would fix things, but it's not that easy.
The other major story about Nick that we need to understand is his relationship with Dima. We learned from the Far Harbor DLC that because Nick has limited memory, he doesn't even remember Dima. He only eventually accepts the fact that Dima is his brother when he and the sole survivor uncover an old recording, a recording of the very moment that Nick escaped the Institute.
Get away from me! What the hell are you?
It's me. We escaped the Institute together. You're my brother.
I don't have a brother. The name's Nick Valentine, and no one in my family tree is a plastic skin freak.
You're just confused. Let me help.
Stay away from me! I don't want to hurt you!
Goodbye, brother.
End playback.
It's a troubling recording because in that recording, Nick becomes violent. In that recording, Nick Valentine doesn't realize that he's a synth. He sees Dima, he sees plastic, he sees metal, he sees a mockery of humanity, and his pre-war human mind kicks in. He pushes Dima away. He thinks of Dima as a monster, not realizing it, that he is Dima, that he and Dima are the same. That's why in the recording, we hear Nick Valentine become violent. We hear Dima forced to defend himself.
God. Dima really did help me escape the Institute? I wasn't just tossed out with the garbage. I must have still been in a haze from one of the Institute's experiments on me. Did I really attack him? Did he really knock the daylights out of me and leave me for dead? Damn it. Why can't I remember?
The health of Nick's relationship with his long-lost brother Dima is up to the sole survivor. The decisions the sole survivor makes helps guide Nick to either embrace Dima as his brother or push him away. I covered the full ramifications of those decisions in my video, Brother Synth, where I go into full detail about the relationship between Nick and Dima. You can watch that video by clicking here. But these two stories, as they are told in Fallout 4, reveal the true character of Nick Valentine, and they raise some troubling questions. Because Nick is a synth, he's been subject to prejudice his entire life. His response to this prejudice is stiff. He doesn't allow himself to be bullied. He pushes back, usually with wit. We see this on board the Prydwen.
You disgust me.
Not much of a sight yourself.
And in Nick's interactions with some of the other companions.
Ready to continue our mission, soldier?
Ready.
Roger that.
Dance?
Valentine, I can't believe you're replacing me with this thing.
Believe it, bucko. Now, isn't there someone else you should be irritating?
That said, Nick is an understanding guy, and he's surprisingly forgiving for a synth in his position. He admits that the people of Diamond City treated him with a great deal of prejudice when he arrived.
Thank goodness I found Diamond City. It's got its flaws, sure, but it beats the hell out of anywhere else in the Commonwealth. Of course, when I took up there back when, people were just as scared of the Institute as they are now. Maybe more. The massacre of the CPG was still pretty fresh in people's minds at that point, and folks were still losing sleep over the broken mask. Plenty of people assumed I was just a saboteur, moving in to melt down the reactor or poison the drinking water.
But he understands why they did. He explains that the massacre of the CPG, the Commonwealth Provisional Government, had recently happened, and it was done at the hands of a synth.
The Commonwealth Provisional Government. Years back, a group of settlements tried to get together and form a coalition. Every settlement with even a hint of clout sent representatives to try and hash out an agreement. Only the Institute sent a representative of their own, a synth. The man killed every rep at the talks. The Commonwealth Provisional Government was over before it even got off the ground. I took up in town not long after. I was damn lucky they didn't just tell me to scram right then and there.
They had also just survived the broken mask incident. Nick Valentine explains exactly what happened.
This was long before I'd moved to town, but apparently some gentleman type shows up in Diamond City, heads down to Power Noodles. Guess he didn't like the food because he pulled his pistol and opened fire on the folks enjoying theirs. When security finally put enough holes in him to drop him, they say he was full of servos and sprockets, just like yours truly. Seems he malfunctioned, went berserk. It was the first time people realized that synths had stopped looking like me and started looking like them. Considering what these folks went through, I felt real lucky they let me in the front gate at all.
These two incidents introduced synths to the people of Diamond City, and it was a bad introduction. No wonder they distrust synths. The very first synths they met tried to kill them. Nick understands this. Instead of holding it against the people of Diamond City, he empathizes with them.
Why would you want to live among bigots like that?
Now, I couldn't really blame them, given the circumstances.
This, I think, is partially due to the way some of the first people he met after leaving the Institute treated him. Nick recalls the story with great fondness.
Folks didn't really know much about synths back then, so when I finally ran into people, they mostly treated me with caution rather than hostility. But the kids, they weren't afraid. I think his name was Jim. The first person to actually speak to me after I got the boot from the Institute. My first human contact in this world. Grilled me for an hour. Once they'd seen I wasn't going to hurt anyone, the other folks in the neighborhood came out to ogle the mechanical man. It eventually turned into a pretty swell soiree. A local mechanic even gave me a once-over, free of charge. Those people, they treated me like a human being. I've been trying to return the favor ever since.
You see, it was these people who didn't know him from Adam, who treated him with kindness. Yes, he was a bit of a sideshow attraction.
You can't be that naive. You really think you were anything more than a sideshow to those people?
I don't doubt that's partly true, but they still treated me better than they had any requirement to. I think it's a lesson worth considering.
But they could have responded with fear, they could have responded with violence, but they didn't. And Nick remembered that, and he encourages the sole survivor to recognize that too. This was a very important thing for Nick to experience right out of the Institute, because it set in his mind the way humans can act forever. He goes to Diamond City, and he sees a lot of prejudice, but he remembers these people who opened their homes to him, these people who gave him a free tune-up, these people who treated him like a human being, and he realizes that all people can be like that. He just has to earn their trust.
But folks sure started turning the other cheek when I showed up with the mayor's daughter. Gal of about 15. Pride and joy of the mayor back then. Man by the name of Henry Roberts. The young Miss Roberts decided she'd run off with some caravan hand she'd, known for an evening. Turns out the guy was part of a gang of kidnappers. I didn't even know who I was rescuing, just stumbled on a crying girl and 4 toughs.
You took down 4 guys by yourself?
Well, I didn't have to. Back then, synths were even more of an unknown quantity than they are today. I told them I was rigged to explode and started going beep, beep, beep. Hardest part of that rescue was keeping from laughing as they climbed over each other to get away. I took her home and the mayor dubbed me a hero, offered me a place in town. Lots of folks protested, said I was a spy, but he wouldn't have it. Taking up in the city was tricky at first, but I never tried to hide what I was, and people seemed to warm to that.
He understands why the people of Diamond City distrust synths. They have great cause to. Synths have killed their members. And so he spends his time earning their trust. He could have responded a number of ways. He could have become indignant. Well, if they don't want me, I don't want them. He could have started protests. He could have tried to get revenge. Instead, he shouldered their abuse, he shouldered their bigotry, and treated them with kindness, took on their cases, helped find their missing family members, helped solve their personal problems, day after day, week after week, until after a few years of working hard for the people of Diamond City, he earned their trust.
Why would you want to stay in a place you clearly weren't wanted?
Well, there were times I seriously considered going. I started off doing the jobs no one else wanted. I got more banged up being Diamond City's handyman than I ever did living out in the ruins. But I guess folks never forgot I rescued the mayor's daughter, so they started coming to me when people went missing. Wife runs off with a new paramour and takes the rent money with her. Talk to the synth. An upset father decides moving him and the kids to Good Neighbor in the dead of night's not the worst damn idea since the bomb. Go get Nick. After a while, the jobs got so backed up, they didn't even ask me to do the handyman stuff anymore. Hell, I was so happy to do it, it was months before I started charging anyone. I never stopped being Nick the Synth, but it was Nick the Detective folks came to see. It was about then that things finally started feeling normal. It took me a long time to realize that home is where you make it.
They may hate all the synths in the world, they may distrust every synth they meet, but Nick Valentine, he's a synth they trust. Nick Valentine, he's one of the good ones. Nick believes, possibly naively, that if you treat people good, they'll treat you good.
If you're good to people, they'll be good back. That's something I've always believed.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, I don't think that's true. I think there are plenty of times we can all point to where we've treated people well only to receive hostility in return. History teaches us the same thing. There are some people who will look a gift horse in the mouth. They don't appreciate the goodness that they've been given, the kindness that they've been shown. When they're treated well, they don't necessarily treat you well in return. But Nick has uncovered a truth about humanity, and it's that most people are fair-minded. You will have some that are so crazy that they won't like you no matter what you do. But most people, when forced to confront the fact that you're not a monster, even though you're a synth, when forced to realize that you can do good to them and you will do good to them, even after they're bad to you, they soften and they begin to embrace you. That's what Nick discovered. He's spent years in Diamond City earning the trust of the people of Diamond City, and he sees that city as his home. Even when Dima tries to get Nick to join Acadia because that's where synths belong, Nick disagrees.
Hey. You know, Nick, if you wanted to stay in Acadia, you'd be welcome here.
Thanks, but I've got my own place back in Diamond City.
among humans. Here you'd be with your own kind.
I hate to break it to you, but I define my kind as people I know, that I trust.
You see, he's not just a synth. He's a member of Diamond City. Those are his neighbors. Those are his people. He doesn't believe people should be segregated by what they are. He believes people should be neighborly. He believes that you should help people who need help.
What do you think of Acadia, Nick?
Well, living in a scientific observatory wouldn't exactly be high on my list of comfortable spots. At least that fog is far enough below.
I was talking more about our ideals. Synths as their own way of life. Not hiding from what they are.
Kind of easy for you to say that, though, isn't it? You and I, we can't pretend to be anything else.
That just means we're in the perfect position to help our kind. We can be the example in the face of adversity.
I'm not looking to be anyone's example. You help who needs help. It doesn't have to be more than that.
As a private detective working in Diamond City, Nick Valentine has seen a lot of evil done to the people around him. Tragically, he tried to revisit those people who showed him the first human kindness he ever experienced.
Where's that town? We should go visit.
I tried to go back and say thanks once I'd gotten myself established, but the place was wiped off the map. Raiders. Don't know what happened to the people.
They had been wiped out by raiders. Nick doesn't excuse that. He doesn't say, well, I'm sure those raiders were just trying to survive. Well, I'm sure those raiders were just trying to find a place for themselves in this wasteland. Well, there's no such thing as morality. It's the post-apocalypse. Nick doesn't believe any of that. He sees evil for what it is. Those raiders robbed those people of their lives. All those people managed to live for years without killing others, without raiding other settlements. The people of Diamond City are able to band together and forge a city for themselves. They don't have to raid settlements for food and caps. They engage in trade. You see, theft and murder and being a raider is not excusable in Nick's mind. It's something that must be fought. He's seen how hard his neighbors have had to work to defend themselves in Diamond City, to set up their shops, to live their lives. And Nick himself has worked hard to help them live their lives, to rescue the mayor's daughter when the mayor's daughter gets kidnapped, to find missing people when the Institute kidnaps people. He's put a lot of personal effort into righting those wrongs. He's not afraid to work hard. He knows that hard work is necessary to build society, to keep people free. This is why he feels so strongly about finding Eddie Winter and bringing him to justice. Eddie Winter didn't kill his fiancée, but he did kill Nick's fiancée. Eddie Winter didn't cause him any harm, but he did cause great harm to people who lived hundreds of years ago. Nick is a man of justice.
I don't know, Nick. It sounds a bit like cold-blooded murder.
Who says it ain't? But I don't have to be human to know that sometimes the only way to end evil is to kill it. Now, that bastard won't be hurting anyone else.
But what gives, Robot Man? Why do you even care? Some girl gets whacked 200 years ago, and you come into my home acting like a hard guy? Christ, look at you. You're not even alive.
Then I guess I'm in good company.
You ain't taking me down. Shit, not yet.
We're done here.
And he's not afraid to fight for what's just, even if it means killing someone, so that justice be upheld.
Because I was Nick Valentine. I had his memories, his fears, all that poor bastard's hope. I remember getting the call to head to some lab in Cambridge to get that neurotrans whatever. And the next thing I know, I'm in a trash heap. My family, my home, my entire life gone. Then I discover all those things that they weren't even mine. Everything I ever was belonged to Nick. I'd hoped with Winter gone, the last hint of that old world snuffed out, I could finally be free. But being out here with you, what I finally realized after all this time was that taking down Winter, it wasn't about Nick or Jenny or even you or me. It was about justice, about doing what's right. And that act of goodness, that's ours. All the good we've done, that's ours, and ours alone. And even if that's the only thing in this world that I can ever claim as mine, not Nick's, not the Institute's, but mine, then I can die happy.
This is why he opposes the Institute. Yes, he was wrong by thinking that the Institute just chucked him into a trash can. But the Institute still comes to Diamond City and kidnaps people under cover of darkness. The Institute still makes a bad name for Synths, making his life harder. He believes people should be free to succeed or fail based on their own merits. That's what he had to do. He crawled out of a trash pile and made a life for himself. Made neighbors by being neighborly, friends by being friendly, and he believes that every person should have that same freedom. To have a big organization robbing that freedom from people, that bothers Nick, which is why if you side with the Institute, he takes you aside.
Couple of sources saying that you were the one leading the Institute attack on the Pridwin. So, you want to tell me why you did it? Why you sided with those boogeymen?
What? I figured you'd be happy seeing your old friends come out on top.
I guess I'll add it to the growing list of things you've got wrong.
There wasn't a side to choose. The Commonwealth is beyond saving. The Institute is the way forward.
Look, I know as well as anyone living in the Commonwealth's no picnic. But this?
You know what the Brotherhood would have done to the Commonwealth, Nick. I did the right thing here.
Look, no one had more reason to dislike the Brotherhood than me, but this?
Was there really any other option? The Institute were the only ones trying to preserve humanity, Nick.
Preserving humanity? That's what we're calling taking out the Brotherhood? The Railroad? All those lives lost. For what? So a group of mad scientists can keep plundering the Commonwealth to their heart's content? Is that truly the world you want to live in?
Watch yourself, Nick. You owe your existence to those mad scientists.
They really have gotten their claws into you, haven't they?
This seems like it's personal, Nick.
I ain't thrilled to see the folks who gave me the boot coming out on top, but this is bigger than that.
I want to live in a world with a future, Nick. And the Institute? That's humanity's future now.
Thanks to you. You know, since the first time we met, I'd always got the sense that you were gonna change this place. I just never expected it'd be like this.
But if you destroy the Institute, Nick Valentine approves.
And the people of the Commonwealth slept soundly, for the greatest monster was gone. It took a lot of guts to do what you did. I know it couldn't have been easy.
What do you mean?
It's just not the sort of thing most folks could handle, changing the face of the Commonwealth forever.
You'd be surprised. It was as easy as pushing a button.
Well, aren't we lucky you showed to do the deed?
Everything the Institute's done, they got off easy.
Won't hear any argument from me. It's hard to even wrap your head around. A world without the Institute, lurking in the shadows. But that's the life the people of the Commonwealth will get to lead now. All thanks to you.
Hey, it was fun. Anything else you need blown up?
You know, I dare say you've done enough.
Well, the people of the Commonwealth better be ready to show their gratitude.
After what you've done, I don't expect that's going to be an issue.
I didn't do it alone.
Sure. But we both know without you, none of this would have ever been possible.
How are you doing with all this?
Well, there were a lot of questions I was hoping the Institute could answer, but I've already made it this far without them. I think I'll manage. This is a brave new world you've ushered in, but I suppose it'll do. Right.
This is the future of the Institute that you're protecting, Unit. Remember that.
Yeah, and we wouldn't want to do anything to upset the Institute, would we?
For being a synthetic human, he has a surprising knowledge of pre-war literature. We heard him make a reference to A Brave New World in that last bit. It's possible that he's referencing Aldous Huxley's 1931 novel, Brave New World, set in the year 2540, where people are psychologically manipulated, where people are conditioned to believe and act a certain way. It would certainly make sense with the Institute at the reins. What has man to look forward to but a dystopian future? But he's actually referencing Shakespeare. He mentions A Brave New World when you first meet him.
They've cut you loose. Welcome to the Brave New World, with such people in it.
which is a nice bit of foreshadowing on Bethesda's part. Here they tie the beginning and the ends of the game together through Nick Valentine. Here he's quoting Act 5, Scene 1 of William Shakespeare's play, The Tempest. "O wonder, how many goodly creatures are there here? How beauteous mankind is! O brave new world that has such people in it." In Shakespeare's play, the person who said that line, Miranda, was honestly talking about how impressed she was by such people in it. But when Nick uses the line, he was doing so with irony. Thrust into a post-apocalyptic world, surrounded by bigots and raiders and murderers, a brave new world with such people in it. He makes references to literature during great moments in the game. If you choose to blow up the nucleus, Nick Valentine says,
I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
This is a reference to a line in the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. It's fitting here because it is said that J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the nuclear bomb, repeated this very same line upon witnessing the world's first nuclear detonation. Another moment is when the Brotherhood of Steel appears in the Commonwealth. The Zeppelin flies overhead, and Nick Valentine says,
Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing.
This is a reference to Edgar Allan Poe from his poem The Raven. The full quote goes, "Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token. And the only word there spoken was the whispered word, Lenore." Here we see the silence of the night broken by the arrival of the Brotherhood of Steel. Nick Valentine stands there wondering, fearing, doubting, and as an immortal synth, he dreams dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before.
Thoughts?
Flying that ship into the heart of the Commonwealth. Mark my words, the Brotherhood's here to start a war.
How can a synth with memory problems be so well versed in pre-war literature, Hindu scripture, Shakespeare, Edgar Allan Poe? Well, I think it's unlikely that he stumbled upon these tomes as he wandered the wastes. I think the more likely explanation is that he's remembering things that the original Nick Valentine at one time read. We learned from Dima that Nick Valentine's memory is limited, but he gets these flashes, these moments when he remembers things from his past. And it's possible that in times of duress or in times of great significance, he can reach back into the original Nick Valentine's memories and pull out a fitting pre-war quote. This ability leads us to a tough question. Is Nick Valentine really a person? Or is he just a walking holodisk, a collection of recorded memories, programmed to retrieve them at appropriate times, programmed to cobble together a personality? His name is that of a man long dead. He even dresses and talks the way he remembers the original Nick Valentine, and detectives of that time dressed and talked.
What's with the outfit?
After I started the agency, it just seemed like the sort of thing a detective ought to wear. I got some old memories, pre-war, faded to all heck of guys dressed like this, doing what I do. Putting on the hat and trench coat, I figured it'd let folks know I was serious about the whole thing. Clothes make the man and all that. Guess I felt they made me the man I wanted to be.
In a previous video, I argued that Gen 3 synths are indeed people. I recognize that they're not human, but they are made from human DNA. They are made from organs that grew. They do have independent minds that accumulate experiences and memories on their own. I think that they're people. But Nick is not like that. He's not like Dima. Dima, even though he is a synth, he creates his own personality over time by accumulating memories based on experience. But Nick is not like that. Nick had a personality implanted into him. So is Nick a person? Is Nick alive? It's certainly a debatable question, but I say yes. I do think Nick Valentine is his own person, mainly because he's self-aware. He realizes that he's not human, and it bothers him. It bothers him that he's not human. It bothers him that his very presence can scare people simply because of what he is. He is painfully aware of his robotic limitations, and he exists in a different place in time from the original Nick Valentine. People change. as they age. The person I am today is not the person I was 10 years ago. If that person and I were to ever meet, we would probably have a lot of arguments. We would probably see the world in a different way. But does that make me any less Oxhorn than the Oxhorn of 10 years ago? Does that make him any less Oxhorn than the Oxhorn who lived 20 years ago? Who's the real Oxhorn? The Oxhorn that was a child, or the Oxhorn sitting in front of a microphone talking now? The answer is that they're all Oxhorn. They're Oxhorn living in different moments of time. If you were to take a man's life and stretch it out over a line, and then visit that man at any point along that line, you would visit a different person. All of those people are the same person, and yet they're different from each other, ever so slightly different from each other. They're their own people. They have their own thoughts and opinions. I think the same is true of Nick Valentine. At one moment in time, the original Nick Valentine sat down in a chair inside the CIT and had his mind placed on a holodisk. He then left and then lived the rest of his life until the bombs dropped and likely killed him. The Nick Valentine who died when the bombs dropped is different from the man who sat down in that chair and had his mind saved by the Institute. All those Nick Valentines, all those moments in time are gone. They no longer exist. The Synth Valentine is the only Valentine left. And just like the original Nick, this Nick changes over time. The Nick we meet in Vault 114 is not the same Nick who crawled out of that garbage pile near the Institute. If those two Nicks were to meet, they would have very different opinions of each other. The garbage pile Nick would probably attack the newer Nick, thinking that he was a crazy mechanical man. But the Nick from Vault 114 is a more mature Nick, a more seasoned Nick. A Nick with greater experiences. A Nick who has changed over time, which is a very human thing to do. This, I think, proves that Nick is more than just a photocopy of a man from the year 2077. Yes, Dima and Nick were made differently. Dima was a clean slate. He made himself over time. Nick was not a clean slate. Nick was an intact personality. But since that moment, the moment he escaped, he's had all those decades to become his own man, to learn from his own experiences. Yes, he had a starting point, but he's at a completely different spot now. He's not the same man he was when he left the Institute. He's changed. He's matured. He's become a different person. We don't know how much of Nick's personality comes from the original Nick as a program or evolved within the new Nick as he lived his life. The Nick Valentine we meet dislikes sarcasm. He does so because he recognizes sarcasm for what it is. Sarcasm is a coping mechanism used by those who have unresolved anger. It's not humor, it's hostility disguised as humor. It's irony used to mock another human being. It's fundamentally unkind. And Nick Valentine hates it when people are unkind. For good reason, many people have been unkind to him his entire life. So when the sole survivor is sarcastic, when the sole survivor is unkind, Nick Valentine is one of the few companions who doesn't just laugh it off. He will sometimes, but usually he gets in your face about it.
We could give you a new name. Would that help? I got it. Crumblebot. 3000.
Well, I suppose it's the thought that counts.
This is how it starts, Nick. Next, you'll be forgetting your keys and thinking I'm your great uncle from Southie.
Yeah, you always know just what to say.
You're getting too old, Nick. Past your warranty.
Still got enough life in me for a good right hook, so don't push it.
An evil king in a sub shop. Does a meatball monster show up at some point?
Yeah, from what I've heard, the pastrami golem is the one you really have to watch out for. Anyway, if you're done being a wise ass...
Mr. Metal for Hands doesn't know how to get back to the factory?
No, I skipped that part of the orientation film while they were busy pulling me apart and putting me back together again.
Especially if the sole survivor is sarcastic at the worst of times.
So, Dima is dead.
On the bright side, you get to continue your alas, I'm the only prototype synth routine.
You know, why don't you just shut the hell up for once? I swear you care more about sounding smart sometimes than you do about who has to listen to it.
Let's just hit the road, all right? I don't think I can talk about this anymore.
Instead, Nick believes the sole survivor should be sincere. The sole survivor should be honest. The sole survivor should be kind. Nick is honest and upfront and kind. He treats respectable companions with a great deal of respect.
Right.
Mr. Valentine, I couldn't have picked a more worthy replacement.
Codsworth, you flatter me. You take care of yourself. Don't let this one boss you around too much, Codsworth.
There's nothing I'd like more, Mr. Valentine.
So, any stories you two come across out there? I get the exclusive, right?
Piper, I wouldn't know who else to tell. You two go do the Commonwealth proud.
We'll try, Nick.
But he's bad at keeping secrets. He's honest to a fault. He understands and knows exactly who Deacon is, and he talks about it openly.
Huh. Deacon. You two taking care of some official business?
Mr. Valentine, you flatter me. Nick, you old dog. Good to see you. With him along, I know you're both gonna be fine.
Ah, Deacon. We'll keep our eyes peeled. You just make sure your folks all keep doing the same, all right?
Imagine him having this conversation in the middle of Diamond City. Diamond City, which is being observed by the Institute, who use their watchers. It's no wonder it makes Deacon a little uncomfortable. Some things should not be spoken of in public. But Nick Valentine is not a fan of secrets. Nick Valentine's job is to uncover and expose secrets, which is one reason why he likes Piper so well. He and Piper live in the same city. They're neighbors. They both equally dislike the Institute because of what the Institute does to their neighbors. And they have similar jobs. Piper is a reporter seeking to uncover the truth. Nick is a detective who also uncovers the truth, which is why Piper is the only person in the entire Commonwealth whom even Nick Valentine will flirt with.
Traveling with Piper is not for the faint of heart. I'd know.
Nick, you always know just what to say.
Nick Valentine, the synth who cannot be romanced. Nick Valentine, who is always about business. Even he has a soft spot for Piper. He's compelled to question the Soul Survivor's judgment when the Soul Survivor goes off gallivanting with companions who do not have scruples.
Damn, I forgot to pick up that motor oil for you, Valentine.
Cute, McReady. You come up with that all on your own? So this is the sort you're taking up with now?
Yeah, and who could blame her?
Hey, big guy. Don't eat this one, all right?
Robo-Man not tell Strong what to do.
Heading out with Kate, huh? Hope you know what you're getting into.
Hey, Valentine, I think you've got something on your face. Oh, it's skin. Yeah, you might want to get that looked at.
But even though he questions your judgment, he's never unkind to these people. He still treats them with human dignity, especially if they are first kind to him.
Right.
All right, Nikki. Watch yourself out there.
Don't worry, Kate, I will.
Whether or not these personality traits originated in the flesh and blood Nick Valentine, they live on only in the Nick Valentine we know. The synth, the detective, the decent human being. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a character profile on Nick Valentine. He is such a fascinating character, and Bethesda puts so much time and energy into him that sometimes it may be worth it to just replay the entire game using just Nick as your companion. He has something to say for almost every event in the game. What are your thoughts on good old Nick Valentine? Do you like him as much as I do, or do you think that he's an annoying robot? A dirty, filthy synth that should be destroyed like all of the others. Ad Victoriam! Let me know in the comment section below. I read all of your comments and I use your comments as inspiration for my future videos. Which character profile should I do next? I've done a number of character profiles for Fallout 4 and for other games, including Fallout New Vegas. Let me know the character profile you would like to see next in the comments section below. I publish a new video 6 days a week, so if you want to make sure that you don't miss my next character profile, be sure to subscribe and click that bell notification button. And did you know that I've got a t-shirt shop? That's right, folks, if you're interested in a Fallout or Oxhorn themed t-shirt, you can find a link to my shop in the description below. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. Patreon subscribers gain access to a private channel on my Discord server, as well as a bunch of other cool Oxhorn perks. But more than anything, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just so glad you're watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with a brand new video.